If people commit crimes, they need to pay the price. You can't have a $950, hey, get out of jail card free, and just go in and willy-nilly steal stuff. This is a real issue in our country for businesses, small and large. Walmart's closed down. Target is closed down in some areas. There's a Neiman Marcus in California that it closed down. This is a real impact, something we have never seen before.
It's been a crazy week, hasn't it? You stop and you think about it. Mayorkas impeachment, the special election in New York, some of the other investigations. It's never stopped. Some of the shootings that have occurred. Valentine's Day. I mean, we kicked a week off with the Super Bowl, went in overtime. So it's been a long week. A lot's gone into the week. We're going to have a great conversation, though, today. Linda McMahon is here with us. She was the administrator of the Small Business Administration under President Trump for the first couple of years. Then she launched and started this thing called America First PAC and America First Policy. And they were the outside groups that helped raise money to highlight the president's policies, to get support for him, and to help him as he went up for re-election in 2020, do some outside advertising and surrogate work, et cetera, like that. Linda headed all of that. She actually take a step back and led, and she was the CEO of WWE, the wrestling organization, the foundation, and built that from scratch. And it's interesting when you think about it, like she headed the Small Business Committee. She knows exactly what it was like. And we're going to get into that with her. The big difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, I think in a lot of cases, is they actually had people who knew what it was like to run a business, to make a payroll, to build something from scratch. She did that. And now she's leading the America First Policy Institute. She's going to explain a little bit about what that is and why it's important. And I think the work that they're doing in a lot of areas is critical to a second Trump term. One of the things that I have found fascinating, though, and I don't know if you guys are seeing this everywhere, but like I live in Virginia, but I go into the city, into DC, maybe once a week. The crime is unreal. The carjackings, the retail theft, and almost every morning on the TV news, you see something. Well, just this week, 3 cops were shot in DC. Now, I want to show you a clip. This is the mayor's report. It happened on Valentine's Day. Muriel Bowser is the mayor of Washington, D.C. She has been a leader in defunding the police, getting rid of these, taking down a lot of the crimes to misdemeanors and getting it away, and has had a very weak response as far as what's happening. You see businesses moving out all the time. But listen to her response when asked about the officers that were shot on Valentine's Day morning.
Can you tell us why you didn't go to the shooting this morning, Mayor?
Mayor, are you planning to go to the scene at all in Southeast DC?
So you see that. There's no response. She says nothing. 3 officers are shot in the hospital. A 4th one was injured. And she's headed into a Valentine's Day event. Not my thoughts are with them. My prayers are with them. I'm getting updates. She literally has nothing to say. Nada. This is the problem. We have created a system where, only up to $1,000, it's okay if you just steal. That's not that much. How do you expect to grow a retail business, a clothing store, a restaurant? It's hard enough as it is, never mind people coming in and stealing things all the time. But this is what's going on these policies of the left, city after city after city. It's disgusting. I want to tell you about one of our great sponsors, Delta Rescue. You guys have heard me talk about Delta Rescue before. It was founded by a guy named Leo Grillo. He started rescuing animals. First one he rescued was a Doberman. And then he founded Delta Rescue. And if you go on deltarescue.org, you can check out the great work they do. Just click on one of the videos. If you're an animal lover, I've rescued 3 dogs. I know what it's like you hear stories about, shelters that can take care of them for this long or that long. Delta Rescue is a no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter, a sanctuary. If they take these dogs in, give them the nutrition, the veterinarian care, and let them roam free. It's amazing what they do. And Leo has done an amazing job of helping to fund this place. And so if you go to deltarescue.org, you can give 5, 10, 100, 1,000, whatever you want to support this mission if you're an animal lover. But more importantly, there's a estate planning kit there. If you can help make Delta Rescue an enduring mission, which is what Leo really wants, to make this go on forever so that we can keep taking in dogs, cats, horses, other animals that are being neglected and abused and abandoned, please do that. Go download that kit, see if it can be part of your estate planning. Go to deltarescue.org and take it there. So I want to get into this with Linda McMahon. Like I said, I mean, she grew the WWE from nothing into the organization it is now. Decades of wrestlers have gone through this, to leading the Small Business Administration and now the America First Policy Institute. Let's get in it with Linda McMahon. Linda, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean. It's fun to be on the show with you.
So let me ask you this. When you took over as administrator of the Small Business Administration, what kind of were the priorities that you set forth under a Trump administration that kind of really helped small businesses grow and allowed people to take out loans and start new businesses? What was it that you and the Trump administration brought to that job that might have been different?
Well, I can tell you it was really President Trump's policies. It was the fact that he wanted to lower taxes. He wanted to get rid of overburdensome regulations, and we focused on doing that. And it really was successful. I went all over the country. I went to every district office in every state. There were 68 district offices. And I toured small businesses when I was there. I did local press conferences. And I talked to the people on the ground. I said, tell me what will help you. Will the tax cuts help you in your business? And without a doubt, every single one of them said, clearly they would. And what would they do with those tax savings? Reinvest them in their companies, hire more people, and they could expand their businesses. So it really did lead to growth in the economy. And the whole process was incredibly successul.
How much do you think, like, your background as somebody who understood what it took to grow a business mattered? Like, could you say, yep, I went through that same struggle. I know what it's like to comply with all these regulations. Did that help, A, just in general, and B, with the credibility of addressing these small businesses?
Well, you know what was interesting? When the president-elect hadn't taken office yet, President-elect Trump asked me to come to Trump Tower in New York and talk to me about taking over as administrator of the Small Business Administration. He said, I've got a really novel idea. He said, I'd like to have somebody in place that's actually built a business and knows what it's like and can talk to the people on the ground. And when I would talk to small business owners and I would say, look, I've been in your shoes. I've been bankrupt. Once I lost everything, lost my home. My car was repossessed in the driveway. I know what it takes to work 24/7 when you're building a business. I know what it's like to lose it all and then have to rebuild it all. I know the impact of taxes, and not only the impact of taxes, but the uncertainty of what taxes you're going to have to be dealing with. How can you plan? How can you budget? And how is the regulatory environment going to impact what you're doing? I mean, if you recall, the Trump administration said that for every new regulation you wanted to put in place, you had to get rid of 2. And as it turned out, I think we got rid of between 8 to 10 regulations for everyone that was on the books. And it was just, it was terrific to see the business environment and the economy just really take off and grow.
You mentioned the phone call you got from President Trump. I was around Trump Tower for a lot of the calls or the meetings. I wasn't for yours. How did that go down? I mean, did he just pick up the phone and call you, or had you guys been in touch? What was that like?
Well, he didn't pick up the phone and call me directly. There were some folks that I'd been working with. And don't forget, I've known him for about 25 years.
Well, I was going to ask you,
So we weren't.
Since you brought it up, let's take that back then. How did you get to know him?
Well, I got to know him. He actually was a big fan of WWE. He had come to some events at Madison Square Garden, and he invited us to join him for Rolling Stones concert in New Jersey. And so we did that. And it was just fun. And WWE then had 2 or 3 of its big pay-per-view events from the casino in Atlantic City. And Donald Trump was a great business partner during that time, and we just had a lot of fun together. He appeared on some of the television shows. And we just had fun doing it, and the events were very successful. And then he was involved in a Battle of the Billionaires match for WWE, and the loser of that match had to get his head shaved by the winner of that match. And so Donald Trump was represented by a WWE wrestler, and Vince McMahon was represented by a WWE wrestler. And as you can imagine, Donald Trump's wrestler won. And Donald Trump, in the middle of the ring, right then and there, shaved Vince McMahon's head. So that was the Battle of the Billionaires.
Can you imagine if it had gone the other way?
There was no chance it was going to go the other way.
Can I just ask, was that, when we are joking aside, was that preordained? Was that scripted, or was it legitimately like those two wrestlers were going at it and you saw who won?
Well, WWE is scripted entertainment.
What?
Yes.
So
So
it's no, I'm just kidding.
scripted entertainment, lots of fun. In fact, the job description at WWE is to put smiles on people's faces.
Well, that I imagine. I wonder how many people would have smiled if Donald Trump had had his head shaved, because I think that would have been, looking back on it now, considering all of the fun that Jimmy Fallon had with tussling with his hair. Can't imagine what it would have looked like with a buzz cut.
Well, I can tell you that it would have been a costly clause in the contract.
So
had something gone wrong, but nothing was going to go wrong. We knew that.
Right. So go back to this post-election interaction. Was it something that you sought out? Was it something that his folks or his team reached out to you?
Well, I let it be known that I'd be willing to serve in the administration if there was a role that the president felt would be good for me. And when he called the folks in my office and asked me to come and have the appointment with him, I didn't know what we were going to talk about. And so when we were sitting there, we were discussing it, he said, look, I really have a job I think would be tailor-made for you. And it would be something that we really, really need to have someone strong in small business administration. He was an incredible supporter of small business. And as a matter of fact, when he was pushing tax cuts and deregulation, I would often fly with him on Air Force One. We would be going to different venues, and he would be, promoting his tax cuts, et cetera, to different audiences. And he would always single me out, and he would say, ask me to stand and acknowledge that I was the administrator for Small Business Administration, and that we really did have the backs of small business, because after all, they are the backbone of the economy. And I actually learned a stat that I didn't know when I took over, and that is that over 99% of the businesses in this country are small businesses. And they contribute about 40% to our overall economy. So it's an amazing, amazing statistic.
Hey, folks, I've thought about contingency planning for years. I was a graduate of the Naval War College. One of the things that we talked about all the time was what happens when things go wrong. Maybe that's a natural disaster, but what happens when the power goes out in your house for an hour, maybe a day, maybe weeks or months? Will you be ready? Could you power all of the things that you and your family needs, medical devices, electronics, tablets, computers, or even your refrigerator to make sure that you have a food supply? Well, guess what? With the Patriot Power Generator 2000X, you wouldn't have to worry about any of that. And it comes with a free solar panel, because that's what powers it. You don't need to worry about gas or filling it up or running and hoping that that's all there. Nope. The Patriot Power Generator works just off the solar panels that come with it. If you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer, you can check out this great, great deal that they have. 4patriots.com/Spicer. You get the Patriot Power Generator, which powers all of those things, a refrigerator, medical devices, all the things that you would need in time of an emergency come with it. And the best part is it's portable. It can run in your house. You can put it in your car. Those are the kind of things that get you ahead of the things that you never want to deal with. Go right now to 4patriots.com/Spicer and check out the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. This will be your savior in a time of an emergency. It's interesting because I was thinking about this in advance of this interview, and I was thinking to myself, there's a real difference between someone like you and Trump, who's worked for a company, met a payroll, built something from the bottom up, versus Joe Biden, right? Which is he's never had a private sector job. I mean, the guy literally got elected at 29 years old to the United States Senate and hasn't looked back since. And I think that clearly makes a big difference how you approach these businesses, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does. And having an understanding of the impact on the economy from small and big business. In fact, the other thing that President Trump would say when I was with him, he would always ask me, he'd say, Linda, let's make sure everybody knows that small business is big business in our country. And he's so incredibly right about that. And I'll be repetitive in that he fully understood the impact of the value of small business and wanted to make sure that small businesses had the tools that they needed. We started apprenticeship programs, training programs for labor, making sure that the district offices around the country had what they needed in order to reach out to the local banks to make lending to small businesses easier. It's often thought that small businesses actually make the loans that the SBA makes loans to small businesses. But in fact, that's not the case. The banks guarantee the loan and the SBA comes in and guarantees the loan, but the bank actually is the one who says whether or not this is a good risk for SBA. So it's a little bit different than how it's thought. So to work with the local banks to make sure that the local businesses had access to that capital was incredibly important.
When you mention a stat like that, and I think to myself, how many small businesses? Well, let me put it to you this way: as somebody who had grown a successful business, when you got to Washington, what were your impressions of an agency like the Small Business Administration, in the sense of, did you feel that they had the understanding of what small businesses actually go through, as someone who had been on the other side? Or were you like, these guys have no clue what it takes to actually run a business?
It was mixed. I believe that at the district office level, all of the directors that were the district office level fully understood, because they were meeting with the small businesses. They were helping them, access their loans. The offices themselves had, former CEOs or other people who'd been in business who met with the entrepreneurs in their areas and would help guide them and develop their business plans and help them through the process of making their pitch, if you will, to the banks to get their access to capital. So I believe that all of the people on the ground had a real full understanding of what the small businesses in their areas were going through. It's a little bit different with the bureaucracy in Washington and in the agency offices, who are, very tied up every day with, just getting the work done and not fully understanding what's going on in the field. It's a little bit like when I was a CEO at WWE. I would often, tell our marketing people and those who had other jobs in the company, said, get out in the field, go in the stores and see how our product is displayed. If it's a licensed product, go to live events, feel the crowd, understand what's going on. Because if you don't do that, you can't have an appreciation for what the small businesses in those local marketplaces were going through. And so it was very, very important to have the local district office very much in touch with the local businesses. Is there anything that shocked you when you got to Washington in terms of how government operates that you thought, I can't believe that you guys do it this way? Well, if you've come totally from the private sector and you've never been in government before, which was the case with me, I was astounded at the bureaucracy. I was astounded at how long it took to get anything done and all the steps that you had to go through that were just really a lot of them unnecessary. So one of the things that we did at SBA was try to shortcut a lot of that process. I'll give you just one example. For instance, if correspondence came in to me, I remember opening up some mail that had come from one of the congressmen. And I looked at it, and the date on it was like 2.5 weeks old. And I asked my admin, I said, how is it that I now have this piece of correspondence on my desk that's 2.5 weeks old, and this congressman was asking, a question and wanted a response? Well, it has to go through the channels. It has to go through the Secretariat office, this, that, and the other, and da. And so I looked at my admin and I said, I want this fixed. I want it fixed today. There no more than 48 hours if anyone is trying to reach me, and I want that on my desk and ready for action. And I looked at my admin and I said, can you fix this for me? And she said, yes, ma'am, I'm a former gunny sergeant. This would be taken care of immediately. And it was.
Well, luckily you had the Marine there. That's what they wanted. She wasn't going to take anything from anybody.
No.
Is there anything that you've seen the Biden administration undo or go in the other direction that has been a huge sea change from Trump?
Well, are you speaking about relative to the small business
administration? Yeah, policy-wise.
Well, in terms of small business administration, I mean, one of the first things that I thought we needed to do was to make the Trump tax cuts permanent.
Yeah.
You know, already some of the provisions of the tax cuts are expiring. One of them, which was very beneficial to small businesses, was the fact that you were allowed to write off in total the capital cost of a piece of equipment or new machines, et cetera, in the year in which they were bought, instead of having to amortize them over the 5 years. That gave small businesses, and boy, this was farmers who were getting a new combine. There was a baker that I visited outside of the Boston area who was buying a big brand new oven. He said, I already have the customers to bake this bread. He only made bread. He only baked bread. He said, I already have the business lined up. This new oven is going to increase, I forget now, the percentage to his bottom line. He was going to hire new people, et cetera. So being able to write that off in that year made it possible for them to go ahead and expand their business. Well, that has already started to expire the end of 2023. So now we'll look at partial write-offs for the next 3 or 4 years. And so that stops the growth, if you will, of new businesses who want to expand. That's just one example.
Yeah.
So yes, I did see that the Biden administration, by not making those tax cuts permanent and the regulatory environment permanent, I do think is one of the reasons that the economy has not been as strong. And it clearly was coming back out of COVID when President Biden took over.
One of my big pet peeves is how we are as a country looking at China. I cannot overemphasize in conversations that I have with people what a military and economic threat it is. They are not our friend. They are not looking to do us any favors. And I look at some of the challenges the small businesses are in, meaning that they have, to your point, that they smaller things to buy, maybe not the big capital things. And China becomes the source of where they have to go. What can we do, either tax-wise or other policy areas, to help take back the supply chain to help Americans build what we're outsourcing to China? Or is it sort of an insurmountable labor cost that's really what's at this?
It's not insurmountable. Clearly, it's not insurmountable. Excuse me. We can, well, first of all, let's start with the tariffs that were put in place. And I worked closely with Bob Lighthizer. It was the first time that the Small Business Administration had a seat at the table in renegotiating the NAFTA contract, and turning it into the USMCA.
Yep.
So I believe that there is more manufacturing that can be done in Mexico and Canada when it might not be expedient to right away have it within our country, because we would have more favorable, trade with Mexico and with Canada. And there were some specific things that were put in place with the trade agreements. So they really did help small businesses. And I think we should make sure we continue those. Now, to date, the Biden administration has not, rolled that back. So it's still in place. But I'm afraid that as they talk about now rolling back tariffs, et cetera, that we will handicap, our small businesses. But when you think about the supply chain that small businesses are, get interrupted because they can't get these products, or they can't get the raw materials, et cetera. We need to, as much as possible, bring that back here to our country. I think we saw that during COVID.
Yeah.
We just looked at our pharmaceuticals, the parts that we had to import, from China, and how that could affect our security and our health. But to the extent possible, we need to bring that back into this country. Now, when we do that, we have to make sure that we've got the labor supply and the labor sources that we need. And right now, small businesses and big businesses all over the country, one of the biggest complaints that I hear is that there is not enough labor to fulfill the jobs that are necessary. And so, we've got to get people back to work. We've got to retrain, reskill a lot of the workers who have been displaced by, not just automation, but technology. So there are lots of things that we need to do. And under the Trump administration, we had started apprentice programs and reskilling and retraining. The Biden administration is trying to roll back now the apprentice programs and saddle them with new regulations by saying that if a company is hiring apprentices, they need to be treated as full-time employees with full-time benefits. Well, what company can afford to bring in a workforce and try to train them when they're under the same, that same cost structure? So that just doesn't make any sense. And you see those kinds of things, which is total lack of understanding of how businesses have to work.
I also want to talk to you about my friends at Bishop Gold. The economy is nuts. You see the ups and downs of the stock market. One of the things that I did was I made precious metals part of my investment strategy. I called the folks at Bishop Gold, right? So you can call them 844-984-1616, or you can go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean and have a conversation with them about maybe an IRA or a 401k or just adding this to your investment strategy. I did this. When I talk to you about products that I use, and I know you get hit up by gold groups all the time, I trust the people at Bishop Gold Group. I sat down, I called them, and had a conversation about what I could do, what made sense for me. And they can either ship it to you, they can hold it for you, they can talk to you about how you can liquidate it at some point if you need to get rid of it. But they will have a conversation about what's best for you and your particular investment strategy. So go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean, and you'll have a special promotion there to begin your journey with precious metals. Trust me, I love these folks. They're great. bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean to begin your investment strategy with precious metals. I remember at one point there was this big move to pay all interns. And I thought, oh, that's great. If you're the intern, I wouldn't have gotten where I am today without internships in politics and on campaigns. And it was a sacrifice. I'd go do campaign work or political work or at Capitol Hill and for free, but I would work at night or would do something to get by. Yeah. And that was the trade-off. But they didn't have money to pay you. That's why you were an intern. And when this gets back to the whole point of what I was asking you about somebody with business experience, that if you don't have it, you don't recognize that. You're like, oh, we're paying these interns. And then the company says, great, now we can't afford it.
Exactly. And you lose a lot of young people in those jobs. I mean, what we're seeing a bit of a return to now, and I'm so happy to see it. It's something for, the past 10 to 15 years that I've been talking about, in that we need our vocational training. Now, I am all for students who can go to college, who can afford to go to college, or who need to go to college for the particular job that they're going to have, doctors, lawyers, engineers, those things that need to have those 4 years in college. But there are so many jobs today that do not need a 4-year college degree. They can go to a trade school, plumbers, electricians. I mean, if you pay a plumbing bill lately an electrician who comes to your house, and one time I looked at the labor cost on the bill when I was having a plumber come in. I said, I'm in the wrong business. I need to go back and learn how to be a plumber, because honestly, they do have good, strong wages. And if you have those apprentice programs or even those vocational trainings in our community colleges that are working with industry to find out what they need, how do they skill the labor force to fulfill those jobs that companies already have, and the two of them can work together. I mean, there's so much we can do, to help fulfill our labor shortage. And at the same time, have success rates for those who don't need to go to a 4-year college, or while they're doing their 2 years or their apprenticeships or their internships, they can go to that night class or whatever and work towards their degree or go into business for themselves. I think we've just overlooked this, and it's, I think, incredibly important that we understand how much better a job we can do at with our workforce.
I want to ask you a sort of turn on this in terms of challenges that small business face. I was downtown DC. I went into a store that I go to once in a while, and I'm talking to the owner of the store and some of the challenges that he faces and blah, blah, blah. And he says to me, I said, so how's crime? And he looks out and he goes, you see there? And it's, 10 yards away. He goes, there's a guy shot there. And I said, oh my God. And then the other gentleman that works with him goes, no, not just shot, killed. And I kept thinking to myself, then I wake up and on almost every morning on the DC media area TV in the local news is another store about a store closing because of crime, right? They're not able to handle the theft. There's a Safeway grocery store in this town, and on the screen I'm going to show this, where they've put these sliding doors. It'll be up on the screen here, where you now have to get out of the Safeway after you buy your groceries. You have to put your receipt there because crime has become such a problem that they don't want. But let me ask you, I know that's not a policy change to directly with Biden, but it is. When these folks on the left stop treating crime as a problem and start defunding the police, I don't know how a small business that's a retail store, for example, can get by when you can go in and just steal the merchandise and walk out.
I mean, Sean, isn't it common sense?
But it is, but no one stops it. I mean, literally, there was a CVS that closed down the other day in DC. And like I said, this is when I ask these guys, this is the number one thing they bring up and say to me, here's what was here. This place was robbed. This one, I don't feel safe here. This guy got carjacked. And it's to me, this is like immigration, where I don't understand why we're debating this stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you cannot walk down the street in a city and you look at, New York City, it's not just DC and New York, but it's a lot of these places, Chicago. I don't know if you're a small business trying to get by and you have to in the back of your head, because what I think of sometimes is you smash that window. Yeah, maybe they have insurance, but how many days do they go without operating now because the window's smashed? So they got to replace that.
Well, it's just ludicrous. First of all, defunding the police, those policies have made a huge difference. And the fact that they're arrested and they're immediately let go back on the street, like in New York or in California, where, hey, if you only steal up to $950, they just let you go. It's okay. $950 to a small business is a lot of money. And it's not just one $950. It's 12 people come in and they steal $950. You can't pass that cost on to the consumer. And that's a lot of money right out of the pocket of those small businesses. And they often just have to close up shop and go out of business. Now, that has a negative impact on the economy. You're not employing the people that were in the store. And when you think about that crime rate, who wants to come and work in those stores? They then become afraid that, they're afraid for their safety to come and work at the store. And who's going to protect them? And then parents who maybe had their high school student who would come and work on weekends or an after-school job, they don't want their children down there working in the stores because they're afraid for the safety. So it's just an incredible, I think that is a lack of policy and a change in policy. If people commit crimes, they need to pay the price. You can't have a $950, hey, get out of jail card free and just go in and willy-nilly steal stuff. And so it's not only the one-offs, but these gangs that are coming in now really organize retail theft. They come in, they just grab and they take and they leave. And what we're finding out in a lot of the cities is there are like a very few number of these gangs that are doing repetitive stealing. They're very hard to catch. And this is a real issue in our country for businesses, small and large. I mean, look at, some of the larger stores, as you mentioned, who have closed, and Walmart's closed down. Target is closed down in some areas. In some of I think there's a Neiman Marcus in California that it closed down. So this is a real impact, something we have never seen before. There was always shoplifting. There's always shrinkage, if you will. And I remember one of my first jobs, just when I was in high school, just a teenager, was working in a grocery store. I was a cash register clerk. And one of the things we really had to keep an eye on was, you'd watch for the person that would come in the front door and they'd go over and they would, slip a bottle of pop in their jacket or that sort of thing. And so that was small. And you accounted for some of that. You didn't want to let it happen and you tried to prevent it. But the amount of money that is just being lost by these stores today. I saw a stat the other day. I think it was $112 billion of what's called shrinkage from our retail stores. And I think $112 billion. Now, shrinkage can mean that, it's some, product that's, damaged when it comes in. But it also relates to inventory that is stolen off the trucks or the trains before it even gets to the store. Or it's also the amount of inventory that is stolen or the goods that are stolen right out of the store. $112 billion loss. And it's just, we have to do something about that. The laws have to be enforced. We have to have prosecutors with spine. We have to have the police force that is supported and properly staffed so that they can arrest and know that if they make an arrest and bring someone in, that person's going to have to pay the price for that and be accountable, whether it's serving time, whatever it is. We have to get back to making sure that our laws have teeth and our prosecutors have the spine to do it and that they back up our police.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears for a second. We talked about you coming into the administration. After you left the administration, you led America First Action and America First PAC to help the president get reelected, help advance his policies through advertising. You were kind enough to take pity on a young former press secretary and have me join this. But then after that, you helped found AFPI, America First Policy Institute. What are you guys doing? What would you tell people are your goals as far as what AFPI is seeking to accomplish before hopefully a next Trump administration?
So let me give you a little history about the founding of AFPI. The president and CEO, Brooke Rollins, was President Trump's national policy director. And she worked very closely with him in the White House. And we really all had anticipated another term for President Trump. And so the policies that had been laid out for his second term were, really robust. A lot of them continuing what we were already doing, but, just increasing some of the other policies and looking at things differently, all which have been wonderful, I think, for the country. But that didn't happen. But these policies were in place. And now we just couldn't let them go to waste. And so Brooke Rollins and Larry Kudlow and Robert O'Brien, who were all right there in the White House, really started looking at this and talking with Jared Kushner and saying, okay, what can we do now to make sure that we can continue with these policies, develop new policies, making sure that Congress has the research, the white papers that they need to help them as they're drafting legislation, and not only the U.S. Congress, but also state and local governments. How can we be helpful and beneficial to them? And Brooke called me and we talked about my coming in and serving as chair. I was so delighted to do this. And so what we've seen with AFPI, America First Policy Institute, and now the sister organization, America First Works, is that we are able to, through our 22 centers, which have been developed, Centers for Energy, Centers for Education, Center for Small Business and the American Worker, Center for the American Dream, and American Prosperity. You can see, and we're very happy to have you look online at americafirstpolicy.com to see all of the policies that are being developed and the messaging then that is helpful for Congress to help push through those policies. If you look under, just take the Education Center. We developed a toolkit for parents who could download this toolkit and understand how they could be more involved in their local school boards, how they could run for school board, how they could impact education, in their areas. We have our, the Center for Energy. Well, what's going on now with, no drilling? What policies need to be in place, and how can we help push those in the local environment? So we're providing all of that backdrop for different centers and different aspects of the economy and for governance all over the country. And we are really being able to have a great impact. We have a whole center on election integrity for training poll watchers. These are the policies that are in place. We're not a political arm, and we're not endorsing particular candidates, but these are the policies and the rules and regulations that need to govern, and they're conservative policies for sure, but they do need to govern both locally and nationally to help our country continue to grow and to be successful.
Just real quick, is the goal to sort of hand that off to a next Republican administration and say, guys, here's sort of a basket of policies that you can, or as the Romney folks would say, a binder of policies that you can go through that are ready day one?
That is the goal, and to help draft executive orders that would be ready for a new president on day one, and also working to not only have policies ready in 2024 as the elections, go forth, and making sure our elections, do have integrity and that every single legitimate vote counts, but also ready to govern in 2025. So looking at all the different government agencies and working, we have over 500 volunteers. In fact, I think it's way more numbers than that now, who have been in these agencies, who are sitting and working with our groups at AFPI to say, okay, this is a great structure for this agency. Perhaps we could slim this down. Maybe you need to add a couple of people over here. Now, we're not writing names in as to who should be there for these particular jobs, but it's really the structure and the organization of the different agencies that are within government, so that when the next president is elected and he begins to look at then the names of the people he wants to fill in, that will understand the structure. And that's just something that we've never, really had before, ready to hand that off. It'll just put us so far ahead of the curve in the successful transition of our
Absolutely. Linda, always appreciate your time and what you're doing. You continue to serve in so many great ways, and you don't have to, frankly. You've been extremely successful, but I just, what you do to continue to give back and to advance the cause is so appreciated. So thank you for being with us and everything you continue to do.
Thank you, Sean, for having me.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. It really is interesting, isn't it, that the people that you bring in matter. I made fun of Biden at one point when he's doing his cabinet at all, because it's all identity politics, right? That there was no experience required. Pete Buttigieg, head of the transportation department, when he was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, I wrote this in my book, Radical Nation, 66 buses that he oversaw. You wonder why on every front there's a problem, right? Highways, seaways. There's nothing going well in Pete Buttigieg's wheelhouse, because you appointed a guy who was LGBTQ and young, and that was your qualification. That's what you get. When you get Linda McMahon, you get someone who understands how to run a business. Small businesses thrive. More people go to work, right? Because she gets it. Dennis McDonough chose to head the Veterans Affairs Administration. Has he ever served? No. Is he a doctor that might be able to help reform healthcare delivery? No. What's his qualification? He was White House Chief of Staff under Obama. Oh, so let's take care of him. There's a big difference in how these administrations staff themselves, and I think that's important. The work that AFPI is doing, by the way, and Linda mentioned it, if you go to americafirstpolicy.com, you can see their work. I was there day one. I know how important it is to have the ideas, the policies, the resources, and they are basically handing everything over with a bow. Does that mean that Trump will do everything? No, but it gives them a head start. It gives them things to choose from, and it's critical what they're doing in terms of policies and staffings. Next week, by the way, we've got Newt Gingrich on tap. He, the speaker that led the revolution in 1994, is going to tell us what it's going to take to get it back, to stay in the majority, what policies, what hindrances, how Mike Johnson, the speaker, can navigate these things. So have a great weekend. And by the way, South Carolina's primary is a week from tomorrow on Saturday. And I think that will be the end officially of Nikki Haley. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. Continue to subscribe and share. Spread the love. We'll see you back here on Monday on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.